What's up, guys? Chef Riding Free. Today we're going to talk about something that kind of attaches to a previous video that I did about why a Harley Davidson, and one of those reasons was serviceability. If you haven't seen that video, I will put a link in the video for you. But one of the big reasons with a Harley Davidson is serviceability, and we talked about the availability of getting service and the ability to have dealerships available. So we're going to talk about why it is important to have your service done or do maintenance on your motorcycle today. So I compiled a list for you. We'll get into those. But the first thing I want to talk about specifically is service intervals. So a lot of people have questions about Harley's service intervals, and it's actually pretty easy. So Harley Davidson recommends that you service your motorcycle at 1,000 miles, 5,000 miles, and then every 5,000 miles thereafter. Now, with those service intervals, you have different things that are done to your motorcycle. A lot of people think that a service is just an oil change or some fluid change, do a 3-hole change. That is not the case. There are a lot of things that happen when you do a service, and a lot of things that are done to your motorcycle to make sure that it is running in perfect condition. So, with the service intervals, and we'll talk about having services done at the dealership versus doing your own and the pros and cons of that stuff. One of the big things that I would say to you is, if you're going to have a service done at the dealership, the 1,000 mile service is probably the most important that you have done. Now, you can choose to do services on your own, do your own maintenance. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I do my own maintenance on my motorcycle because I enjoy doing it. I find value in doing it myself, and I find, the pride in doing that to be significant for me. Now, the other thing with that is when I do my own maintenance on my motorcycle and service it, I know my motorcycle inside and out. The only thing I really don't do is get into the inside of the motor. That's just outside of my skill set parameter, so I do know my limitations, but I do my own maintenance. Like I said, I find a lot of pride and satisfaction in doing it. It just helps me to know my motorcycle. I firmly believe that when you have a Harley Davidson motorcycle and you ride it, you develop a relationship with the motorcycle, and that may sound kind of cheesy to some people, but you develop a relationship. I know everything about my motorcycle. I know its sounds, I know how it feels, I know how it rides. That way I know when something is not right or not normal. So if you're going to have a service done at a dealership, like I said, I think the 1,000 mile is probably the most critical service to get if you have a new motorcycle. With that 1,000 mile service, think about it. You're riding on top of a vibrating motor. You're riding a machine. And if anything is going to come loose, that's probably a time to do it when you have put some miles on it. Now, when a motorcycle comes from the factory, it typically has 1 mile on it. They do a ride at the factory, and then of course when a motorcycle comes to the dealership and they do a pre-delivery inspection and assemble the parts on the motorcycle that need to be assembled, they will do a safety ride, which is 5 miles. So most new motorcycles will come with 6 or 7 miles. If there's going to be an issue with something vibrating loose or any issues with the motorcycle, when you think about it, it's not likely to happen within a couple of miles unless it's something, catastrophic to a motor or something. So the 1,000 mile service becomes important. Like I said, if you're going to have anything happen, it's going to happen, once you start riding it and it's vibrating. So you definitely want to get that service done and have the dealer check everything out. Especially if it's a new bike, everybody's concerned about warranty coverage, and that is always a concern with a new motorcycle, is making sure that things are covered under your warranty. Now, people may try to tell you that if you don't have your services done at a dealership, your motorcycle will not be covered under warranty, and that is simply not true. The motor company has recently put out a memo, and there's been a lot of issues that you can Google about the motor company and warranty related issues. under the Federal Warranty Act, which is the Moss-Ferguson Act or the Ferguson-Moss Act. I can't remember which way that goes. That specifically states that a dealership would have to prove that you had done something or not done something or done something incorrectly to be able to cause the damage to the motorcycle, that it was directly a relationship to what you did. Like if you didn't put oil in a motorcycle, ran out of oil, your motor seized up, that's 100% your fault. So one of the things about having services done at the dealership is you do have that peace of mind that things are done by a Harley-Davidson technician that has training, and that responsibility now falls onto the dealership. So if for whatever reason they service your motorcycle, didn't put any oil in the motorcycle, and you ride the motorcycle and the motor seizes, well, that's their responsibility. Obviously there's time frames associated with that. You're required to do some upkeep on your motorcycle. Checking the oil is super important, just like checking your air pressure and your tires. So you do have some responsibility that does fall on to the owner of the motorcycle. So getting into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about with serviceability and the importance of it, you got to think about number one in the top of my list is safety. Like I said a minute ago, you are riding on top of the motor. When you're riding a motorcycle, you don't have a lot of metal around you. You don't have protective factors like airbags and all the safety features that cars have. So you want to make sure that your safety is looked after. And a lot of people would debate and say, well, yeah, but not getting a service doesn't change the safety on the motorcycle. And if your motorcycle is running in perfect condition and you never have any issues with it, the motorcycle keeps you safer. If you're doing your brake flushes at regular intervals, you're less likely to have brake issues. If you're doing maintenance and upkeep on your motorcycle and monitoring your brake pads, you have the ability to stop. You know, there's a lot of things that could go wrong in a machine, and that's what you're riding, is a machine. So safety, super important. Top of that list is doing your services, and your maintenance is going to keep you safer because your motorcycle is running like it should. Number two on the list of why it is important to get your service and maintenance done on your motorcycle: cost of ownership. Now this is something people probably don't think a lot about when you purchase a motorcycle. You just really think about riding the motorcycle, and I agree. However, when you own something, you have a cost of ownership associated with it. And I'm just not talking about the purchase price of the motorcycle. So if you have your motorcycle serviced and you have your maintenance done when you're supposed to, and you provide the proper upkeep on the motorcycle itself, your cost of ownership will be less over time. Now, maybe common sense for some people, because if you don't do your maintenance and you have things go wrong with your motorcycle, you're going to incur that cost of getting that stuff repaired. Some motorcycle repairs can get super costly, so it's a lot easier to maintain your motorcycle from the get-go and get your services done and make sure that everything is done correctly. That way your cost of ownership is less over the period of owning your motorcycle. Talking about getting your services done at the dealer and the warranty issue, like I said, if people tell you that you can't do your own services, they are completely wrong. You just got to be smart about what you're doing, and there's some responsibility that comes with that. If you're going to do your own services, like I do, I have a lift at my house, I do all my own stuff. When you change your fluids, keep your receipts. You have to use products that are designed for your motorcycle. You can't just put any old type of oil in it. It has to be something that is in the owner's manual and recommendation from the motor company. So if you were going to do your own, you get your supplies from the dealership, or you can order stuff from AMSOIL, whatever your preference is. The oil debate can go on and on for hours and hours. But if you're going to do your own services, keep your receipts, keep track of your mileage. I always take a picture of my mileage with my receipt, with the service materials. It may seem cheesy or overboard, but I don't ever want to have any issues to where that would be called into question. I also have a service manual for my motorcycle. So with that service manual, it does tell me and teach me things that I need to know about doing services. It has all of your fluid volumes that you're going to need, torque specs, all of that stuff becomes important if you're going to do it. Make sure that it is done correctly. And I record all of my service intervals and my mileage in the service manual or the owner's manual. So that way you have a place to keep track of your stuff and show that you completed that as required. One of the other things I think people don't put enough value in with service is the retained value you're going to get if you trade or sell your motorcycle. And I think a lot of that has to do with people just, hey, I love my motorcycle, I'm going to continue to ride it, and that's awesome. But at some point you may decide that you want to trade your motorcycle in, or you may decide that you want to sell it. I will tell you from personal experience that you will get more money for your motorcycle if it has been properly maintained and serviced. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at the dealership, as long as you have records and you're able to prove stuff that is important. In my line of work, working at the dealership now, I can definitely tell a motorcycle that has been properly maintained and serviced versus one that hasn't been. And I will tell you that I always offer more money on vehicles that have had the service and stuff done, because in that transaction, that deal, I now have to consider how much I would put into a motorcycle to recondition that motorcycle and be able to resell that motorcycle. If I've got to spend a lot of money doing service stuff because somebody didn't do it, obviously I can't give that person, more money for their motorcycle up front. So I have to take that into consideration. If it's something that's already been done and I know that I don't have to do that, well, it gives me the ability to, apply more money to their trade going into that deal. The extended value that you get over the life of your motorcycle and then trading that in or selling it is a return on your investment. And that's kind of where you got to look at is, you're investing in your motorcycle. If you put that money and that time in and making sure that those things are done, you will get that return on your investment at some point in the future. Now, the last thing on my list, and this list could go on and on and on, but the last thing on my specific list about the importance of service is the longevity of ownership. Now, most people trade their motorcycle in every 2 to 3 years. So we just talked about the trade-in value and, getting that return on your investment. So if you're one of those people that trade bikes in often, very important to get the service done. But if you're one of those guys that likes to keep things and use things, ride it till the wheels fall off, that's outstanding. I've had a couple of motorcycles for a long period of time, and part of what has enabled me to keep those motorcycles for a long time is simply the fact that that motorcycle has been maintained. You got to think about all of the things that go into the motor and the motorcycle, all of the things that are moving. So you have things that are in contact with one another, so you need lubrication. There are things that will wear out over time, such as gaskets. Rocker box leaks are a pretty common thing, especially if the motorcycle sits for any period of time. Your probability to have issues increases. So that's, another whole factor of why it's important to service your motorcycle. If you end up letting it sit for a period of time, you definitely want to look after it a little bit more and provide that upkeep. But with the longevity of ownership, if you continue to maintain your motorcycle, it is going to continue to run for you. There are people that have hundreds of thousands of miles on a motorcycle. I myself have personally seen with my own two eyes a motorcycle with 1 million miles, documented miles on it. It was on display at a dealership, and it had all the information about the motorcycle. It had the service records with it and everything. the owner of the motorcycle, or rebuilt the engine a couple of times, transmission. But this guy, you want to talk about longevity of ownership, owned this motorcycle for a super long time and put just an assload of miles on a motorcycle. How did he do that? He continued to maintain the motorcycle. I think those are pretty important reasons. At least that's my list that I came up with. You guys may have some different reasons or thoughts on why servicing and maintenance is important. If you do, leave a comment down below. Comment on anything I've said. Spur up some conversation. That's half the fun of why I like doing my channel. It gets us mixed up and engaged in things. If you're a returning viewer, man, I appreciate you. If you're new, thank you for stopping by. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button for me. Help the channel grow. That will do it for today's vlog. I appreciate you all. Don't forget, while you're out riding, most importantly, be safe, have fun, and remember, people have made sacrifices that allow us to be out riding free. Until next time, guys, we'll catch you later.